Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. Here you will learn all things related to healing from divorce, mind, body, and spirit, so you can create a beautiful new life filled with happiness. I'm Rachel Ruby, author of Divorce to Bliss, divorce coach, speaker, and attorney, and I'm so glad you found me here. Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. I'm Rachel Ruby. And this episode is about reinventing yourself after gray divorce. Now, for those of you who are frequent viewers or listeners, you may remember that I did a short episode on gray divorce quite a while back. And this is going to be, that was a shorter, much more foundational episode. And this is going to be really a deep dive into how we can become the best version of ourselves after gray divorce, how we can heal, how we can move forward. So I'm going to set the expectation that this podcast is about reinvention, not just healing. Healing is not a linear process, but it's something anyone can do if they set their mind to it. Reinvention is when we completely turn around our lives, turn ourselves into a better, higher version so that we can really find bliss. You may wonder why you did the right thing. Let's say you left your marriage and that was what you had come to. That was the decision you had come to, and it felt like it was the right thing or the only thing to do. But why are you here now? Why are you feeling this? Why are you confused? Why are you having all these difficult emotions? And so I want you to know that the question is not, why did the marriage fail? The question is, what are you as a woman waking up to? Gray divorce is truly a story of awakening, not one of failure. Let's talk about what happens to our identities when we leave a divorce, especially in midlife and especially after a long marriage. Well, first of all, there's a little bit of a shock because we have to grapple with who we were inside the marriage versus now. Inside the marriage, we were a wife, a partner, a mother, and we still may be mother, obviously, but we had defined roles. And after divorce, it becomes blurred sometimes as to what the new roles should be, can be, what we want them to be. And these are all the things we have to figure out. And so even though it's normal to have all these feelings, many times we are on an emotional overload because we don't know how to grapple with these and how to deal with these. The question becomes, who am I without that life that I used to have, that marriage, those roles, those definitions? And interestingly, I had a podcast on muting yourself or becoming unmuted. And I talk about the idea that sometimes in the end of a marriage, or for as long as the marriage doesn't feel right, it could be years. For me, it was years. We tend to mute ourselves because we don't want to bring in more discord, more arguing, more belittling, more manipulating, whatever the word may be, insert it. And so we tend to mute ourselves, and that can often mean becoming more serious, not speaking our truths, not speaking things at all when we have a feeling about something that's contradictory to that of our partner. And that really comes into play here as well when we go through gray divorce, because like me, I muted myself for many years toward the end of my marriage because I wanted to prevent that argument. I wanted to prevent that defensive armor that was put on by my former spouse and that I had to contend with. And I had to, even though I had a different opinion or felt differently about whatever we were arguing about, at some point it just became too much for me and I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I muted myself. And not only that, but I also hid my inner child. And I've talked openly about this on different podcasts. And by that, I mean that I became not as fun and I became more serious. And these were all ways that I tried to escape what I was feeling inside and not have to deal with some of the more difficult things. And so when we go through a gray divorce, these kinds of things can be magnified sometimes emotionally for us because we've been in the marriage for such a long time. Many of us have raised a family with this other person, the former spouse, and we have such clearly defined roles. I used to joke when I was a mother of young children that many of the parents didn't know my name. They didn't know I was Rachel. They knew I was my children's mother, right? So his mother, her mother, but not necessarily my name. And we really, that part of us kind of becomes muted too at that point in time. So throughout the marriage, a lot of times, and throughout any relationship, we mute ourselves sometimes because we're either too tired or we're too frustrated or we don't want to get in the middle of something. But in a gray divorce situation, there's a lot of things that we are going to deal with at this older age that we are now, and that will make the divorce harder and may make the healing process harder, and some things that may make it easier as well. But we just want to be aware of those things so we can move forward and start healing and start reinventing ourselves. So let's get into that. Let's talk about one of the big conflicts that we face emotionally when we're going through a great divorce. And this is the conflict between grief and freedom, right? We have chosen to leave the marriage and we are wanting that freedom. We are looking forward to that freedom, but we have grief about leaving the marriage because, of course, it, like I just said, was an identity. It was who we were. It was a relationship. It was a we. And now there's just this me, right? And so we're figuring out so many new things, and it's emotionally taxing. It can be. There can be days that are good days, and there can be days that are really hard to go through. So we want to take these two truths that can make us feel off-centered or uncertain, and that is the grief for what was and the relief or expansion of what could be, what can be, what will be when we get through this process called healing and reinvention. So these conflicting emotions are hard. And to be quite honest, there's something you may feel every day, every moment, even when you're first starting this journey out of divorce and into this new life and into this reinvention. And you have to realize that this is normal, 100%. All these conflicting feelings are normal. And this is why I usually say that this is really a hard journey to go through on one's own, because there are so many different things we need to be aware of in our minds, in our hearts, our spirituality, in our everyday lives, what we're telling ourselves, how we're presenting ourselves, and what kinds of tools we are using to heal. And if you are a listener or someone who watches the podcast regularly, you know that there are so many tools that I have talked about and had wonderful guests on to talk about. And these are all things you can use to heal. But how do you know which ones are right for you? And if you are regular and you see this myriad of different tools and different concepts and different textures and body, mind, spirit, how do we know these things? And so when we're battling that kind of that grief and that freedom, and we're kind of at a point sometimes where we just feel trapped or stuck or help me. And that's what I'm here to do. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this guilt that we sometimes feel for wanting more. And many women will come out of the divorce, or even when they're going through the divorce, or even when they just start thinking about it. It's that guilty feeling of, I'm thinking of leaving my marriage because I want more. It's not enough. I'm not getting enough love. I'm not being seen enough, not being heard enough. I'm not being respected enough. So many different feelings, right? We all experience different feelings. Maybe you're being manipulated. Maybe you're being verbally abused. Maybe you're being physically abused. No matter what it is, usually when we come to this decision after 50, which is how gray divorce is defined, to leave a long marriage, we have a lot of conflicting emotions, and guilt comes with that. And so I want to tell you that you deserve more. And that guilt is okay. It's a normal feeling. And so what happens is we go through all these motions of the healing process, the reinvention process, and slowly the guilt will kind of just melt off us, because we will learn to love ourselves. We will learn to respect ourselves. We will know what we want, what we need. We will have new goals, and we will become this version of ourselves that is so grounded in loving ourselves and so grounded in knowing. And when someone once asked me, what was the biggest takeaway of the healing journey? What was the biggest, not the biggest lesson, but the biggest kind of feeling that emanated from that whole journey, from me going through everything? And I can sum it all up in one word, and that word is knowing. Knowing that I'd be safe, knowing that I had arrived, done all the work, and that I was ready because I knew what I wanted and needed, and knowing that I would continue to trust my intuition, and do the things that were right for me and right by me. And whether that included not dating the right people or making decisions that might have seemed selfish to others, or learning how to say no. That was a big one. Whatever it was the knowing. And so the guilt is going to melt away, I promise you, when you do the work and you start to reinvent your life and yourself. So the logical question is, from a lot of my clients, obviously, what about this in-between phase? What about this phase where I'm no longer that wife, that partner that's attached to that identity, and this new phase where I am now attached to the identity of me, and I've discovered this incredible version of me, and I know what I want and need. So what about in that middle phase? It's awkward because you're not who you were before the divorce, and you're not yet who you're becoming. And there's a lot of loneliness here. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of decision fatigue, which is when we don't know what the right decision is for us, or we might not put ourselves first yet. And so someone might ask us to do something, and we may not want to do it because we're having difficult feelings that day, or we really wanted to go to a yoga class and someone's asking us to do something at the same time. And so I call it decision fatigue when we say, okay, I'll do it, and then we don't go to that yoga class, or we don't do whatever the thing was we had planned for ourselves, or we don't trust the emotion that we have that I really just want to sit by myself tonight and not go and do something with a bunch of people, or not go out and help somebody, even though I'd love to help them. It's not the right time. And so all those things can come up, and loneliness also is really hard too. And so that even might get thrown into that decision as to whether to say yes to something when you really inside your heart want to say no. Because if you say no, maybe you weren't going to have a plan and you were going to sit home alone that night. And so that could trigger you saying yes. So that is why in this in-between phase, we need to not easily rush into things such like into relationships, distractions, and things to numb ourselves, like drinking or going out to parties, and when we, again, don't really want to be there. But you can resist this because this is only temporary. And all of this that we go through, the feelings, and some of those feelings might last for a lifetime, but the angst with which we feel those deeper emotions, those things are temporary. Those feelings are temporary. This feeling of, how do I make the right choice? Do I choose me, or do I go help my friend? Those feelings are temporary, because when you get into this journey, into this deep dive into you, and again, you realize who you are, and you become this amazing, it's not a new version of you. You're still the same person. We're not trying to change ourselves. It's a better version of you. And so when you become this person, the one who loves herself and the one who knows what she wants, again, that is when this in-between phase is going to start transitioning over to the reconnection and the reawakening of you, of the better version of you, the one who will no longer accept mediocrity, no longer put herself at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to decision making, the one who knows that she is unmuted and she is ready and willing and excited about her life. So how do we do this? How do we reconnect with ourselves? How do we do this core reinvention work on ourselves? And the first thing that is very important to know and remember as you are going through it is that you have to take small steps. This isn't something that happens overnight, and it's not something you can jump from A to Z with. You have to start with the small steps. And in order to figure out what you want, what you like, what you need in your life, you want to start journaling. And I say this all the time. It's so important, especially doing so from the beginning of your journey, because as you go through the journey, when you look back and you realize where you were, and then you see the progression all the way through to the point where you are so free and you feel so free and so happy, and you've created this beautiful, joyous life, you are going to realize how much work you did on you. And even though there will still be days after you're healed where you have a difficult day or challenging day, or maybe you see your spouse somewhere or whatever it is, your former spouse, you're still going to have those things. This is something that is part of you now. Your divorce is part of your life. It's part of your history. But the important thing is that we don't focus on the past. We focus on the present so that we can move into the future. So we can start by making small identity shifts. And one of these is before you answer or make a choice or answer a request from somebody to help or do something, by really just closing your eyes and asking yourself, what do I want? What do I need? Is this something that I feel I should do or that I want to do? Instead of just letting guilt answer for you or letting loneliness answer for you. So you want to start making lists of, again, what you want in your life, what you need in your life in your journal. And these can change. These are fluid, and that's okay. And so anytime you notice a change in something, today I went out and I realized I don't want this. I don't want A, I want B. I don't want to work at this job anymore. I want to start this new field, this new career. I don't want to talk to friends of mine who have divorced and speak poorly of their spouses unless I set a boundary with them, because that doesn't make me feel good inside. Whatever it is, you want to start noticing these things and writing down the changes. And another great exercise is, and I did this a lot when I was healing from my divorce, is to look in the mirror into your own eyes and tell yourself you love yourself. And if you have a question and you're having a hard time answering it, you can ask yourself by looking in the mirror at yourself and into your eyes. And it's really an amazing thing. There's actually something called eye gazing, which people do on their own. And you can look more into that if you like. But really, it's a deep connection with the self. You can also make shifts in the way of spending your time. So what are you spending your free time doing? Don't just sit around and watch television, okay? Get out and move your body. Movement is so important. If you are a regular, you know I talk about this all the time, and how many miles I used to walk every single day when I was going through my divorce. It was just really how I let off steam. I let off energy that I didn't need. I was able to let go of things. And while I was walking, I was outside, so I would notice the clouds and the trees, and I would breathe deeply. And it was really just a wonderful thing. So that was, for me, a little reset on daily habits and what I did on a regular basis that changed the course of my life. And also who you're hanging around with, who your support network is. I have a whole podcast on support networks. And you might have people who love you and whom you love as well, but there are some caveats, and I won't go deeply into those here, but please check out that podcast, because you want to make sure that those people are letting you make the decisions about your life and not giving you their ideas as to what you should be doing, because your life is about you and not what somebody else says you should be doing. So aside from these things, and including the journaling, there are some other ways that you can navigate gray divorce with confidence and clarity. And one of those is to start expressing your feelings, not just to yourself, but to others, and expressing them out loud and not being afraid. And I talked about this in another podcast. You don't have to start boldly by saying, no, I don't want that. If someone says to you, hey, we're going to lunch at this cafe today, the work group, let's say, and you really don't like that cafe and you don't want to go there because this is the higher version of you and you're going to speak your truth, you don't have to just say, no, I don't want to go there. You can say, hey, can we do that next time and try somewhere new like this other cafe today? I really want to try that. And see how that feels. You can use different language. You can rehearse it while you're looking at yourself in the mirror into your own eyes. And another thing is to find quiet time every day. This is so important. You can take a bath, you can do a meditation, you can close your eyes and listen to quiet music. Also, we want to care for the spirit, and we can do this again through meditation and music. And we can do this through connection. We can do this through maybe taking a yoga class or some other type of healing like Reiki or some other kind of class that we haven't done before. And just recognizing that we need to take care of our spirit as well. And this can also be done in nature. And then we want to continuously let go of the energy and the feelings that are not serving us, and to release that as needed. And there's some great releasing exercises that you can do. And there's yoga, there's meditation, there's tons of different types of breath work. So find ways that actually feel releasing to you. And if you need tips on that, please feel free to reach out to me. Another way is to find something new or fun to do that you haven't done before. You can sign up for a class, something out of your comfort zone and something out of the house and out of the work environment. So definitely go take that Italian cooking class and go do a rock climbing class and whatever it is. So you find something that sounds fun and you sign up for it and go do it at least once a week. Mindset tweaks are another great exercise to give us clarity and confidence. And that is just when we catch ourselves thinking something, then we want to turn it around and see it in a different light. If we are having a hard day, let's say, and we're having an emotional, a difficult emotional day, maybe instead of focusing on those difficult emotions, we find something that is positive and wonderful. And I always tell people at the end of the day, every day before you go to bed, think of several things that day for which you are grateful. And when you wake up, similarly, you also want to express gratitude for waking up, for breathing, for being here, for your body and all the wonderful things it's done for you and continues to do for you, for life in general, and for this opportunity to rebuild, reconnect, and redefine you and who you are, because you have that opportunity, and that is something in and of itself for which to be grateful. In fact, that is the most important thing for which to be grateful, that you do have this opportunity to move forward, to redefine, and to live the rest of your life in a happy, joyous state. So what are the two things we need to do to start redefining our future, reconnecting with ourself, our best version? One is that we need to let go of the old timeline. And the old timeline was the couple, the identity, the wife, and the expectations that we had about maybe aging together, about traveling together, about retirement, all those things that were bundled together with that. We want to learn how to let go of those. And then the other way that we're going to start to redefine is to create a new version within relationships, within our lifestyle, and our purpose. And that all comes from doing the work and reinventing ourselves. I want you to remember that we become empowered in this whole journey through divorce. And we want to do that without pressure, because the number one way to become empowered and take back our life and redefine our life and what we want is to not put the pressure on ourselves, because that will slowly melt away as we go through this healing and redefinition process. The healing journey is messy sometimes. It's layered. It's constantly shifting, but it's also gradual. It's not on the fast track. And so you want to give yourself permission to evolve and become without urgency. There's no reason to have a sense of urgency. I know that it feels hard in the beginning to be in this place. Believe me, I've been there. I'm not making light of that, but give yourself the time and give yourself the permission to do this slowly, because that is how you are going to really evolve in your journey. Another really wonderful thing to remember is that you are not starting from scratch here. You are starting from experience and wisdom that you've accumulated over all these years of your life and all these experiences you've had, including the marriage. All of these things contribute to the person you are. Though starting over in midlife is not about going back or backwards. It's about becoming a better version of you as you move forward. It's about being present right now so that you can move forward. So thank you so much for being with me for this episode. I hope it opened your eyes into the depths of gray divorce and how we need to redefine and reinvent ourselves so that we can become happy and find our bliss. And I thank you for tuning in today. If you are a woman going through divorce, please know that you are so supported and you are not alone. This podcast is here for you to help you and provide tools and ways that you can heal and get to a place in which you are happy and loving yourself and loving your life. Please do me the honor of subscribing, commenting, sharing, liking, and telling your friends about this, because you never know who might need to hear this episode right now. Thank you so much.